Hello and welcome into the Pole Position, your first source for news and information in the world of motorsports. Garth McMahon's here with you, solo once again, as we don't have any Andrew or Tommy for this show. Once again, both of them once again having other responsibilities to work on. So you get to hear just me again. But we had a big weekend this weekend in the NASCAR world. We now only have 3 races remaining in every of NASCAR's top 3 series, the Cup Series, the Nationwide Series, and the Camping World Truck Series. And every weekend from here on out, we'll have all 3 of them in action for you. But we only had 2 races this weekend, but darn were they good races. We had a Camping World Truck Series race won by Bubba Wallace, who, if you remember the show from Thursday, I actually picked to win the race this weekend. So, I guess kudos to me for that. I don't know what to say to that. And then Dale Earnhardt Jr. coming home with his first grandfather clock on Sunday with his win in the Sprint Cup Series race, just barely beating out Jeff Gordon. I think if they'd had about 5 more laps, Gordon might have caught him. They were both really hard charging there from that final restart, and they both had to come back from 7th, 8th on that last restart with 5 to go, because all the guys that didn't pit or took 2 tires or whatever, all of them in front of them. So it was an interesting restart. Junior coming away with the victory in that one, though. But we will talk about that in the next segment. First off, we have a truck race to talk about. And first thing is first. The first thing I want to talk about with the truck race, what a beautiful truck that Bubba Wallace had in that race. Changed his number to the 34 and for one race, and ran a commemorative paint scheme for Wendell Scott getting into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Those of you that may not know who Wendell Scott is, was the first African-American driver to win a NASCAR, it was at the time Grand National Series race, what's now the Sprint Cup Series, back in 1962, I believe. I should have looked that up before the show, but I believe it was 62. It was in Martinsville. Big weekend there. Martinsville is Wendell Scott's home track. So not only did Bubba Wallace run a commemorative paint scheme for Wendell Scott, fitting, and I'm sure this was the reason that they did this, because Bubba Wallace is an African-American driver as well. So it kind of correlated. And then David Reagan running basically the same paint scheme in the Cup Series because he already had the number 34. So 2 really cool-looking vehicles this weekend on the track in commemoration of Wendell Scott getting into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and one of them even going to victory lane. Bubba Wallace winning from the pole in the Truck Series race. He had a very dominating performance, led 97 of the 200 laps, so almost led half the race, and that was the most laps led in the race. And he had such a dominating performance. I mean, he obviously... there were parts of the race where he wasn't the top guy out there. I think Johnny Sauter may have had the next best truck in the field besides Bubba Wallace, but he kind of got shuffled back there at the end. Those 2 really stayed right bumper to bumper for a lot of the last half of the race. And then at the very end, on the last restart, Sauter gets bumped out of the way by Timothy Peters and ends up with a disappointing 7th place finish, which did not work well for him in the championship standings, because if you remember, he came into the race 36 points behind leader Matt Crafton. Crafton ended up in 3rd, so he lost 4 points to Matt Crafton, and a 40-point deficit in 3 races is nearly impossible. I mean, that's... For the Truck Series, that's, I believe that might be yes, that's a full race, because last in a truck race gets 8 points. So, a full race behind in 3 races, it's looking very grim for Johnny Sauter, and I think he knows that. He was very, very angry with Timothy Peters after the race. Peters apologized for it, but he said that's just Martinsville, and he's like, well, I'll just buy Johnny a beer in Texas, and hopefully everything will be okay. So we'll keep an eye on that in Texas. Hopefully nothing boils over from that. They did have a few words on pit road after the race. Sauter bumping Peters down the backstretch on the cool-down lap and then pulling right up behind him on pit road, jumping out, confronting Timothy as he got out of the truck. But heated emotions there, always happens at Martinsville, and not super surprising, especially from a guy like Johnny Sauter, who's in a very frustrating position right now. He was the championship leader for a lot of the season, and in recent weeks has really slipped from that. And he's seeing a championship that almost looked assured in the middle part of the season really slip away right now. And honestly, if I were him, I would probably feel the same way as he does right now. So he knows that might have been the nail in the coffin for his championship, because leaving Martinsville, he probably would have gained a couple of points on Matt Crafton, which wouldn't have made a huge difference, but gaining anything is better than losing. So it's a big blow for Johnny Sauter in his championship aspirations, but the win actually helps Bubba Wallace in his championship aspirations, because if you remember, he came into the race, I believe it was 28 points behind. He is now 22 points behind, and actually very close to taking that second position from Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney slipped a couple of points more back in this race as he finished in the 5th position at Martinsville, so lost a couple points to Matt Crafton, who, as I said, finished in 3rd. But Bubba Wallace, obviously, as we said, won the race, so he gained, 6 points on Matt Crafton, so he went from 28 down to 22 down now, and 6 points per race is not going to win him the championship from here on out, but it's going to get him very close. And if Matt Crafton just slips a tad bit and Bubba Wallace keeps running like this, he's going to be right there at Homestead. And, you know, they were saying it after the race that you might want to count Bubba Wallace back into your championship picture. I never counted him out. I mean, you guys, anybody that's been listening to the show consistently right now, you're going to know that you've heard me say, Bubba Wallace, you cannot count him out of the championship race with the way he's been running the second half of the season. And he showed that in Martinsville. He's slowly closing that gap. And say Matt Crafton has another race like he had at Talladega last week, has some problems, finishes in the 14th position. Bubba Wallace has a solid day. Say this is at Texas. Say Matt Crafton comes in 15th, has a little bit of problems, but still comes home with a fairly decent finish. Bubba Wallace finishes in 3rd. I mean, he's gaining 12 points on him right there, and he's going to leave Texas 10 points behind. 10 points in 2 races is not all that much when you're outpointing Matt Crafton in basically every race. So if I were Matt Crafton, Ryan Blaney may be his next closest competitor back there in 2nd, but the guy I'd be worried about right now is Bubba Wallace. Because if Matt Crafton's not on top of his game for the next 3 races, he's going to lose this championship to Bubba Wallace. I can say that pretty assuredly. Just look at the way Bubba Wallace has been running. He's so good right now. And I was thinking this on Saturday during the truck race, that it's a shame he hasn't moved up from the Truck Series yet. I mean, I know this is only, his 2nd year in the Truck Series? I think it's his 2nd year. I would really like to see him move up to the Nationwide Series next year, especially if he wins the championship in the Truck Series this year. Give him a Joe Gibbs Racing Nationwide Series ride, especially if the rumors I'm hearing are true. I don't know that these are set in stone yet, but I continue to hear rumors that NASCAR is going to make a rule next year that in the Nationwide Series and Truck Series that if you run your car with a Sprint Cup Series regular, someone that is getting points in the Sprint Cup Series and cannot get driver points in the Nationwide Series, the Truck Series, you will not get owner points for that race either. Which I'm not 100% convinced that's going to deter the owners completely from running Cup drivers in the Nationwide Series and Truck Series, but if that happens, that'll definitely slow it down a little bit, and you'll definitely see less and less Cup drivers in those series. So it'd be interesting to see going forward if that happens. If that does happen, I think that lends a lot more in the favor of Bubba Wallace going forward to possibly moving up to a Joe Gibbs Racing Nationwide Series ride next year. I would like to see it. The kid's got a lot of talent. I really love watching him on the track. He is a true competitor, and you see it every time he loses a race, comes home second, third, or something. And he was giving it all, and you can see it in that post-race interview. He's always so disappointed to finish second. No matter if it's a good point day or not, he is so disappointed when he finishes second or third, because he's like, dang it, I wanted to win that race so bad. I was trying my hardest, and it didn't happen. He's such a fun driver to watch. He doesn't hold anything back, and the funny thing is, it's very fitting that he drives for Kyle Busch, because he and Kyle Busch have very similar driving styles. And in certain ways, they have similar personalities. I wouldn't say completely similar personalities. Because I don't know that Bubba Wallace has as polarizing of a personality as Kyle Busch does, but he's got a very similar personality. If you've ever watched a truck race or you've ever listened to him in an interview, you know what I'm talking about. He's got that drive. He knows what he wants. He's kind of like Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski said, I think it was last week at Talladega, talking about the Charlotte incident, that he's like, I making friends and being popular was never a number one goal for me. It was always winning races, winning championships. I mean, hey, if I make friends, if I'm popular, great, but that's not my number one goal. My number one goal is to go out there and do the best that I can, and I think that's basically the same way with Bubba Wallace, and I think that's what I like a lot about Bubba Wallace and as a driver. He's so fun to watch. It's really amazing to watch him work those trucks out there and be able to drive in certain situations that other drivers sometimes can't do. So let's run down very quickly here. Let's look at our championship points right now, and let's kind of break down in these final couple minutes here of this segment what the odds are going forward for some of these guys. Really, I think you can call this a three-man championship race right now. I think you can axe Johnny Sauter out of this. Unfortunately, I would have liked to seen him kept going and still be in contention for the championship, but I don't think it's going to happen. 40 points back in 3 races. The way Matt Crafton's running, the way Ryan Blaney's running, the way Bubba Wallace is running, I don't think Johnny Sauter is going to be able to make up those 40 points. That being said, Ryan Blaney sitting in the second position right now, 18 points back. Barring Matt Crafton having a huge problem at Texas, Phoenix, or Homestead, I don't think Ryan Blaney can or will win this championship. While he's been running very good lately, very consistently lately, I don't see a championship drive in him. He's been consistently clicking off top 5s, top 10s, top 12s, whatever lately. But it's consistently right there around Matt Crafton, right in front of him or right behind him. Take this week, for example. Matt Crafton finishes 3rd, Ryan Blaney finishes 5th. Loses 2 points to him after gaining all those points in Talladega when Crafton had problems. I don't see Ryan Blaney winning this championship, but Bubba Wallace, I see having a very good shot at this championship, especially if Matt Crafton has a minor problem going forward like he had at Talladega. If he has one at Texas or at Phoenix, Bubba Wallace is right back in this, and I think if that happens, Bubba Wallace will win this championship. If Matt Crafton slips any in these next 3 races, it's Bubba Wallace's championship to win. So that'll do it for us on the trucks today, and we're going to go ahead and step aside for just a moment, and when we come back, we will talk the Sprint Cup Series this weekend. They were in action as well from the Martinsville Speedway. So stick with us. You're listening to the Pole Position. And welcome back to Pole Position here with Garth McMains as we recap the past weekend's NASCAR action from the Martinsville Speedway. We already talked the truck race, so let's just get right into the Cup Series right now. Lots happening from this race. A lot of questions following this race. Going forward with the chase. One thing, though, that we do know, with Dale Earnhardt Jr. winning this race after he was eliminated last week in Talladega, this guarantees at least 2 drivers will make it into Homestead on points. We will not have 3 guys get in on wins and 1 guy get in on points. There will be at most 2 guys get in on wins and 2 guys on points now, which sets up an interesting scenario, and this possibly could allow someone different to get into Homestead than maybe even we were thinking before this weekend, in terms of who had the best shot at winning races in this round. With that one win being taken out of the equation, it's interesting to look and see right now what the possibilities are for that second guy on points to get in. And I keep going back and thinking, what if Ryan Newman makes it to Homestead? Ryan Newman has been scary consistent throughout this entire chase. He finished 3rd yesterday in Martinsville. Where was he all day? I was sitting there through the majority of that race going, all right, well, Ryan Newman's been good throughout the chase. He's not the best at these upcoming tracks, and he wasn't having that great of a day yesterday at Martinsville. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he finishes in 3rd. I didn't even know he was anywhere up near the front, and that's how he does it. He's so quietly consistent right now. It's almost scary. If you're a fan of any of these other 7 drivers in the Eliminator round right now, especially some of these guys that might have been championship favorites, Ryan Newman, I think, has a very good chance right now of being one of those at least 2 guys to point their way into Homestead right now. I don't think he's going to win at Texas, and I don't think he's going to win at Phoenix, but I think there's a very good possibility he will run extremely well at both of them and squeak his way into Homestead on points. And with as consistent as he's been running, if he makes it to that championship 4 at Homestead, there is a very good possibility he wins the championship because he's run so consistent that it's not out of the realm of possibility. He could finish 2nd or 3rd at Homestead. And say the other guys finish 5th, 7th, 8th, something like that. He wins the championship because he was the first guy to the line out of the 4. So that's the beauty of this system. And it's also the weird thing about this system. Because think about this. Ryan Newman, we're talking about this right now, like Ryan Newman has an outside chance of winning this championship, and he hasn't won a race this season, and probably will not win a race this season. Not that Ryan Newman's not a good driver. I mean, we're talking about him winning the championship. But there is a good possibility he could win this championship and not win a race. And wasn't that the main point of this chase? To emphasize wins, to emphasize winning as much as you could. It was the whole win and you get into the chase mentality, win and you advance. Ryan Newman could win this chase not only having not won a race in the regular season, but never winning a race in the chase. And I would love to see that. I know there's some people out there that it's amazing how many people I've heard say that, some of these guys that haven't run well all season, they don't deserve to win the championship because they haven't won 6 races like Brad Keselowski or 3 races or whatever. And it's just like they ran the format like it was supposed to be. I mean, it's not like they're cheating their way into it. they found a way to get through the system. And isn't that how Jimmy won his 6 championships? He knew how to work the chase. He never won a championship before the chase. All of a sudden, the chase starts, and boom, he and Chad figured out how to work the chase well. And that may be what we say about Ryan Newman when this year's over. I'm going to keep my eye on Ryan Newman right now because I really think he may be a quietly scary threat for the championship. And if he does win the championship, we're going to come back to this episode and we're going to play this clip because I predicted it. So we're gonna come back to this. If he does end up winning the championship, like I said, it's an outside shot, especially if he doesn't win a race going forward. But the fact that there's going to be at least 2 guys get into Homestead on points now makes it a little better shot that he makes it to Homestead. And I think if he does make it to Homestead, you've got to look at him as a championship favorite, not because he could win the race, because he probably won't. But he'll probably get a really strong top 5 out of maybe even a second or a third. And that may be what it takes to win the championship if the other 3 guys maybe are just a tad off at Homestead. It'll be interesting to see. But we need to talk about Martinsville now that we're halfway into the segment and all we've said is, oh, Dale Earnhardt Jr. won. It was an interesting race, though. Jeff Gordon very dominant in the race. Almost won the race. He was catching Junior there at the end. I think if he'd had 5 to 10 more laps, probably could have gotten around Junior. And it was a very weird race. You had some championship contenders that had some miscues. I was kind of disappointed in Denny Hamlin. Came home in 8th, had a strong car all day. We were talking about him on the show on Thursday, talking about how it was probably either going to be him or Jeff Gordon that won the race. And they were really the 2 strongest cars for most of the day. And then he kind of faded to 8th at the end of the race and ended up leaving Martinsville 5th in points. I mean, honestly, I would have figured going into the race, and especially during the race, as strong as he wasn't going to leave Martinsville lower than 3rd in points. But the fact that points, at least in the top 5 right now, are so close leaving Martinsville, this top 5 is separated by 7 points right now. You got Jeff Gordon in the lead, up by 3 on Ryan Newman. 4 back is Joey Logano, 5 back is Matt Kenseth, and 7 back is Denny Hamlin in 5th. And then you've got your 3 guys that had problems on Sunday. Carl Edwards in 6th, who didn't really have problems. His car was just kind of off. He's 6th in points right now, 20 points back, and he came home with a 20th place finish. So he was on the lead lap, though. So not the best day for him, but he needs to do better than that if he wants to make it to Homestead. That's all I got to say. Brad Keselowski, on the outside looking in, once again, we had this in the last round, and he snuck his way into this round with a win at Talladega. It'll be interesting to see if he can sneak his way into Homestead now. 31 points back in 7th. And if you didn't catch the race, he had an interesting day. Was kind of up near the front, not really for most of the day, and then ended up breaking his rear axle. What was that, about halfway through the race? Ended up made it through 3 and 4, but slowed severely. And then they come down the cramped front stretch, and you got guys accelerating off turn 4 that don't realize he's not accelerating. And was it Casey Kane that ran into the back of him? Somebody ran into the back of him. I know Casey Kane was involved, and Casey Mears was in it as well. And it was just, they were calling it the big one at Martinsville because there was literally about 5 or 6 guys that were in this wreck, and there was stuff strewn all over the front stretch. They had to wave a red flag for this, and it took them a while to clean it up. But that shot Brad Keselowski's day. Very, very poor finish for him on the day. Came home in the 31st position, so not a good day for Brad Keselowski. Another hole for him to dig out of. This is kind of funny. I didn't even notice this. Oh, wait, that makes sense. Never mind. And then Kevin Harvick finishing in 33rd. We were a little worried about him going into the race. Poor qualifying effort, started in 33rd, made a very valiant charge to the front, and then had a problem with Matt Kenseth. I believe it was about 260 some odd laps into the race, 267 I want to say. Kenseth just takes it a little too hard down into turn one. He wheel hopped and shot up the track and right into Kevin Harvick. They both hit the wall. Harvick had the most amount of damage from that, obviously, because, as we said, Kenseth ended up finishing and had a decent finish, came home in 6th. Harvick did not have the same fortune, ended up 43 laps down in 33rd, where he started, and is now 33 points out of the lead with 2 races remaining. Basically, he and Brad Keselowski are in that same position now. Of Keselowski's back in that position now as he was in the last round. You got to win to get to Homestead right now. And I don't think that's a problem for Kevin Harvick right now. He's good at Texas, and he's really good at Phoenix. He's won, the last 2 races at Phoenix and 3 of the last 4. He's won the last 2 fall races, and then he won the race back in the spring. His first one was Stewart-Haas Racing. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Kevin Harvick could win his way into Homestead, and I would not be surprised to see that. Brad Keselowski may be a problem, though, because he's not super great at Texas or at Phoenix. So Keselowski's kind of on my worry list right now, especially if he doesn't make up a lot of points in Texas. If he makes up a decent amount of points in Texas, I'm not going to be so worried about him. He might somehow point his way in, especially if another non-chase driver wins in Texas or in Phoenix. But I'm not holding my breath on Brad Keselowski because he's got some serious ground to make up. So does Kevin Harvick, but I think Harvick has a better chance of winning his way into Homestead than Brad Keselowski does. So, interesting scenarios playing out right now. I'm sure we have some crew chiefs right now getting some ulcers. Rodney Childers, Kevin Harvick's crew chief, probably not liking this situation. Paul Wolf probably not liking this situation for Brad Keselowski, saying, oh no, we were just in this position. We just got out of it. Now we're right back into it. So, I think, though, if Brad Keselowski does make his way out of this and somehow makes it to Homestead as part of that championship 4, look out for him winning the championship because he knows how to dig out of a hole. Homestead's not one of his better tracks either, but if he does this in 2 straight rounds, somehow digs out of this hole by winning a race, I'd watch out for him in Homestead because that's the kind of years championships are made of. So if he's able to dig out of this, I'd watch out for him. But I'm not 100% convinced he's going to be able to dig his way out of it. Like I said, watch Ryan Newman the next 2 weeks. I think there's a very good possibility he could sneak into Homestead. And I would like to see that. I would really love to see Ryan Newman win the championship this year in a very consistent season. He's, like I said, he's not won a race, but he's been super, super consistent this season. He's had 15 top 10s this season, and that's why he has made it as far as he has to get into the chase on points and to make it this far into the chase and be second in points. So that will do it for today's episode. Thank you as always, for tuning in, and be sure to tune in on Thursday as we preview next weekend's action for all 3 races from the Texas Motor Speedway. And at that, I am Garth McMains, and this has been the Pole Position. Have a great week, guys.